My name's Lucas. I'm 29. And last month, at what was supposed to be my birthday celebration, my mom leaned in close, hugged me, and whispered, "Don't settle in too much. Sweetheart, this house won't be yours for long." I thought she was joking. I even laughed, thinking it was just her strange way of teasing me. But the tremor in her voice was real. That whisper became the first crack in everything I believed about my family. The night had felt off from the start. The dining room of our old brick house, the one my grandparents built in the 60s, was glowing under soft yellow lights. It smelled like roasted garlic and lemon cake. My dad sat at the head of the table, and thinner than before since his stroke 3 years ago. Across from me was my sister, Sienna, perfectly dressed as usual, flipping her hair and scrolling on her phone. Her husband, Brandon, laughed at something on his screen. And my mom, she kept staring at me with this weird, sad expression, like she was memorizing my face. She'd gone overboard that night. She'd ordered an elaborate seafood spread, even though she knew I preferred simple food. She insisted on taking dozens of photos of me blowing out candles, holding the cake, cutting slices. Between bites, she started pulling out random childhood stories. The kind you'd tell at a farewell party. "You've sacrificed so much for this family," she said, tearing up. "Living here, helping with your dad's therapy, putting your life on hold." Sienna rolled her eyes. "He's not exactly suffering. Free rent. Home-cooked meals must be nice." That stung. I'd been covering almost everything since Dad got sick: groceries, utilities, even part of the medical bills. But I let it slide. I'd been the quiet one for so long, the responsible one, the one who just handled things. When dessert came out, a towering lemon sponge cake my mom said she'd spent all morning baking, she pulled me into a long hug. Her perfume was the same she'd worn when I was a kid. She held me tighter than usual and whispered those words, "Don't settle in too much. Sweetheart, this house won't be yours for long." I pulled back, forcing a smile. "What do you mean?" She only smiled mysteriously and turned to pour coffee. The whole thing left a pit in my stomach. It didn't sound like a joke at all. 2 days later, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, I was in Dad's home office looking for his insurance papers. The desk smelled like old paper and coffee. That's when I spotted a navy blue folder labeled estate planning, updated in my mom's handwriting. My heart started racing. Inside was a freshly printed will dated 3 weeks earlier, exactly when my mom had started acting strange. I read it twice, then a third time, hoping I'd misunderstood. "Ihadent. The house, our family home worth nearly $850. 000 was going entirely to Sienna. So was the savings account. Me, I was being left my dad's 16-year-old Corolla and a check for $6. Ling ling ling. But here's what Sienna didn't know. I'd been secretly paying the $3,400 monthly mortgage for 2 years. After Dad's stroke, money got tight. So I stepped in. I told my parents it was temporary. They never asked me to stop. I just kept paying. Quietly. Every bank record, every transaction, I had saved in my email. And yet, in my mother's eyes, Sienna, the golden child, was the one who needed the house. That Sunday, we had our usual family dinner. Sienna arrived in a designer jumpsuit, talking about the luxury safari she and Brandon were planning in South Africa. "Maybe we'll stay a month," she said, scrolling through photos of lodges on her phone. My mom beamed. "That sounds wonderful. Honey, you deserve it." Sienna added casually, "We're thinking of looking at that lakeside property soon, too. Maybe a vacation house." Mom's eye lit up. "Well, you'll have plenty of options soon." Dad looked confused, but I understood perfectly. I excused myself, went to my room, and printed out 2 years' worth of bank statements. 24 months, $79,000. Then I grabbed the will. When I came back downstairs, Sienna was still talking about her trip. Brandon was showing my mom a list of resorts. The best part is Brandon's boss gave him unlimited time off for our honeymoon. Sienna said. I slapped the will down on the table, right on top of her phone. "You mean with my house?" The room went dead silent. Sienna blinked. "What is this? Why don't you read it out loud?" I said. "Mom, did you really think I wouldn't find this?" My mom's face drained of color. "Lucas, I can explain." "Explain what?" That I've been paying the mortgage for 2 years while Sienna bought designer everything. I spread out the bank statements like playing cards. 24 months. $79,000. Sienna stared at the papers. I didn't know. You didn't want to know? Brandon frowned. Sienna, you told me the house was paid off. I thought it was. She whispered. Mom started crying. We just thought, Sienna has a family to think about. And you. I am family. I said. I've been living in my childhood bedroom at 29. Putting my life on hold for Dad. I haven't dated seriously in years. For what? So you could hand my sacrifice to Sienna. Dad finally spoke up. Son. I had no idea. Of course you didn't. I said. Voice breaking. I handled it quietly, while Sienna got praised for visiting twice a month. I gathered up the statements. I'm moving out this week. Sienna. Good luck covering a $3. 400 mortgage. On a boutique shop salary. And good luck with that lakeside house. I moved out 3 days after that dinner. The silence in the house was unbearable. And I couldn't stand another second sleeping in that small, suffocating bedroom, the same one where I'd stayed up late at 16 studying for exams while Sienna got cheered on for making it through half a semester of community college. I signed a lease on a small one-bedroom apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, peeling paint on the windowsills. Floors that creaked every step, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I closed a door and it locked behind me. No one barged in. No one dropped new bills on my desk with a sigh. The first night, I sat on the floor with takeout noodles, surrounded by moving boxes. My phone buzzed over and over. Missed calls from Mom. Voicemails from Sienna. One from Brandon too. Lucas. You're overreacting. Sienna's voice snapped through the speaker. This is family stuff. We'll figure it out. Just stop making everything about money. About money, I laughed bitterly. I'd poured almost $80,000 into a mortgage I wasn't even on the deed for. But sure. It was just money. The next day, Mom called again. This time, her voice was calm. Careful. Lucas. Honey. Your father needs you. He depends on you. We can't handle his therapy schedule without your help. Please. Come back home. Don't abandon us. That word abandon hit hard. I'd been the only one who never abandoned them. I was there when Dad collapsed in the kitchen. I drove him to every physical therapy session. I argued with the insurance company for hours. And now, suddenly, I was the selfish one. For as long as I can remember, guilt had been my mother's sharpest weapon. I ignored the calls. For the first time, I didn't fold. 2 nights later, I heard a knock on my apartment door. I opened it to find Brandon, standing there in his tailored jacket, looking uncomfortable. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped aside. He sat down at the tiny kitchen table, glancing at the boxes I hadn't unpacked yet. I didn't know about the will. He said immediately. I swear. I thought the house was paid off. Like Sienna told me. Funny. I said, crossing my arms. She's been living like she had a trust fund. He sighed. Look. I'm not saying it's right. But Sienna's under pressure too. She wants to start a family. I cut him off. So I bankroll her lifestyle while she plans nursery wallpaper. He didn't answer. He just rubbed his temples. You know what the funniest part is? I said. I'm not even angry at her spending. I'm angry that my own parents signed my sacrifices away like they meant nothing. Like I was nothing. Brandon looked at me then. Really looked. I get it. And honestly, I think you're right to be angry. But don't burn everything down. Not yet. That not yet lingered in my head long after he left. The following week, I went back to Dad's office. I knew there had to be more documents. Emails. Something that showed how this plan had been brewing. And I found it. In Mom's desk drawer. Under stacks of expired coupons. There was a printed email chain between her and a lawyer. Ensure Sienna has full ownership. One line read, Lucas has no dependents and can manage on his own. No dependents. That was how she justified it. I didn't have a spouse or kids. So my sacrifice didn't matter. I sat there shaking, staring at those words. For years, I believed Mom when she said she was proud of me. That my steady job as an engineer, my careful budgeting, my patience, it meant something. But to her, it was exactly the opposite. My responsibility made me disposable. I took photos of every page. Evidence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying years of moments I'd brushed off. When Sienna crashed my first car, Mom said, "Don't be so dramatic. Lucas, she's been stressed lately." I'd paid, Yedin, $200 for the repairs. When Sienna dropped out of nursing school after 2 semesters, Dad quietly pulled $4, $500 from my college savings account to cover her tuition debt. I told myself it was fine, I'd figure out loans. And just 2 years ago, when Sienna maxed out 3 credit cards, Mom convinced me to help your sister just this once. I paid $3. Babe. I told myself it didn't matter. That family came first. But looking back now, it was always a pattern. Sienna was the golden child. I was the workhorse. A week later, at Sunday dinner, I decided to show up. Not because I wanted to eat with them, but because I wanted to watch. To see how they acted now that I'd drawn a line. When I walked in, Mom froze mid-sentence. Dad looked relieved. Sienna's face tightened. "Well," Mom said, plastering on a smile. "Lucas decided to join us after all." I sat down quietly. Sienna launched into a story about how her friend had just bought a beach condo. "It's inspiring," she said. "Makes me think about real estate more seriously." I let her talk. Let Mom nod approvingly. Then I placed my phone on the table and pulled up the photos of the lawyer emails. "Before you go house hunting," I said, sliding the screen toward Sienna, "maybe you should read these." Mom went pale. "Lucas, that's private." "No," I said firmly. "This is my life. My money. My future. You've been planning away without me." Dad squinted at the screen. "Mary, is this real?" Mom's lips trembled. "It's for the best. Robert, you know Sienna needs." "No," I snapped. "You know what Sienna needs? Boundaries. Consequences. And I'm done footing the bill for her failures." For the first time, the table was silent. Truly silent. Even Sienna had no comeback. I leaned back in my chair, calmer than I expected. "Here's the deal. You keep pretending this is fair, or you start acknowledging what I've actually done. But either way, I'm not your safety net anymore." That night, driving back to my apartment, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd keep paying, keep sacrificing. But what they didn't know was that I had more than bank statements and emails. I had proof. And if they wanted to play this game, I was ready to play harder. Because this wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about justice. After that Sunday dinner, I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred through my windshield. But my mind was razor sharp. For years, I'd swallowed everything. I'd been the good son, the responsible one, the backup plan. But now, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized something simple: they had underestimated me. My family thought they could rewrite the story of my life with a single will. They thought because I didn't shout, because I didn't fight back, that I wouldn't. They were wrong. The first step was documentation. I spent hours organizing every receipt, every transaction. 2 years of mortgage payments, $3, $400 a month, 24 months, totaling $81. Lube. I highlighted every line in my bank statements, stacked them neatly, and scanned copies into a locked folder. Then, I pulled out older files, tuition transfers, car, repair bills, credit card bailouts, one after another. I marked them. 1美元 200 4美元 500 3美元 800 By midnight, I had a complete timeline of every sacrifice I'd ever made for Sienna and my parents. Looking at the numbers laid bare, I felt a mix of fury and pride. Fury because I saw how systematically I'd been used. Pride because, despite all of it, I had held everything together. The next day, I called a lawyer. His name was Daniel Green, a property and estate attorney in town. A friend from work had recommended him. I sat across from him in his office, a small room lined with shelves of law books. "So," he said, adjusting his glasses, "you've been paying the mortgage, but your name isn't on the deed." "That's right." He tapped his pen on the desk. "Do you have proof?" I slid the folder across. He flipped through the bank statements, his eyebrows rising higher with each page. "Well," he finally said, "you're in a strong position. If your sister or parents try to enforce this will, you could make a claim for equitable ownership. At the very least, you'd be entitled to reimbursement for your payments. Can I stop them from giving her the house entirely? I asked. That depends. If you want to challenge the will, it'll get messy. But you have leverage. With this much documentation, they can't just brush you aside. Leverage. That word lit a fire in me. I thanked him, paid the consultation fee, and walked out with a plan forming in my head. That week, I started planting seeds. First, I reached out to an old family friend, Mrs. Parker, who lived 2 houses down from my parents. She'd known us since I was a kid, always quick to bring cookies over during the holidays. Lucas, she said when I dropped by, we don't see you around much anymore. I smiled politely. Been busy. But I wanted to ask, have you noticed who's been taking care of my dad these last few years? Her eyes softened. You? Of course. Everyone knows you've been the one. I see you driving him to appointments, bringing in groceries. Your sister, well, she visits, but not often. Would you be willing to write that down? Just a short statement about what you've seen. She nodded immediately. Absolutely. One ally down. The following weekend, I stopped by unannounced at my parents' house. I found Dad sitting in the den, flipping channels with a blank stare. Dad, I said, sitting across from him. Can I ask you something? He looked tired. Of course. When Mom updated the will, did anyone explain it to you? He frowned. No. She told me it was paperwork. I didn't read it. I trusted her. I clenched my jaw. So you didn't know the house was going to Sienna? His eyes widened. What? No. That house is Lucas. That house is yours too. You've kept us afloat. Hearing him say it out loud felt like a crack in the dam. For so long, I'd wondered if Dad even noticed. Would you put that in writing? I asked quietly. I hesitated. Your mother won't like. Dad. This isn't about her. This is about fairness. After a long pause, he nodded. That night, he signed a statement I drafted, confirming he never agreed to cut me out. Meanwhile, Sienna's mask was starting to slip. She called me late one evening, our voice sharp. You're making Mom sick with all this stress, she said. I kept my tone calm. Stress from what? From me finally standing up for myself? From you being selfish? She shot back. You've always had this victim complex. You think paying a few bills makes you a martyr? I laughed bitterly. A few bills, try $80,000. Sienna, while you were posting beach selfies, I was keeping a roof over everyone's head. There was silence on the line. Then she whispered, almost venomously, you'll regret this. And just like that, she hung up. Her threat didn't scare me. It confirmed I was finally pushing back where it hurt. I started mapping out next steps. If they wanted to pretend I was disposable, I'd show them how wrong they were. Step 1, secure witnesses. Done. Step 2, line up legal protections. In progress. Step 3, wait. Let them feel comfortable. Let them think I'd backed off. Because the real blow would come when they least expected it. That Sunday, I didn't go to family dinner. Instead, I stayed home, cooked pasta for myself, and listened to the quiet hum of my fridge. For the first time, the absence of their voices didn't ache. It felt liberating. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. They wanted to hand the golden child everything on a silver platter. I was about to flip the table. I woke up on Monday with a list. Names. Dates. Amounts. A plan. I'd done the quiet work. Now it was time to turn up the lights. First move the mortgage. I walked into the lender's branch with a folder under my arm and a calm I didn't feel. The lobby smelled like printer toner and citrus cleaner. A woman named Kara led me to a glass office. I've been making the monthly payments on my parents' house for 2 years. I said, I'm not on the deed. There's an estate plan I disagree with. I want the account noted. Do you have documentation? She asked. I opened the folder. Bank statements. Email confirmations. My spreadsheet with dates and amounts. $3. 400. On the 1st of every month. 24 entries. 81元. 600 total. Her eyebrows climbed with each page. We can flag third-party payer status, she said, and add a note pending ownership dispute. Good. And I'm moving the auto-pay to manual. I looked her in the eye. If they want a roof so badly, they can lift a finger. She typed, printed, stamped, done. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the air felt clearer. I hadn't burned the house down. I'd just taken my hand off the hose. Second move, protection. I met Daniel Green again. He'd read the emails between Mom and the lawyer. He'd seen Dad's signed statement. He glanced at Mrs. Pross. Parker's witness note? 2 paths. He said, drawing a line down a legal pad. Challenge the will? Or assert an equitable interest? The second is faster. We file notice. If they try to transfer title, anyone touching the property will see your claim. Do it? I said. He nodded. Also, document care. Dates of therapy drives. Receipts for prescriptions. Anything that shows you carried load? I smiled without humor. You'll get a box by Friday. Before I left, he added, they may try to corner your father into signing a new power of attorney. You should be present where you can. Calm. Factual. I heard the subtext. Don't give them an easy story about you being unstable. Third move, truth in daylight. Sunday dinner again. I arrived early. Mom opened the door. Lips tight. Dad sat at the kitchen table peeling an orange. The radio low. Sienna breezed in 10 minutes late. Sunglasses on her head. A shopping bag swinging off her wrist. The fridge door was open. Inside, 5 kinds of mustard lined the shelf like soldiers' whole grain. Dijon. Honey. Spicy brown. Truffle. We never finished a bottle. But Mom kept buying more. The mustard parade. Fake abundance. It made me want to laugh and smash all 5 at once. Lucas. Mom said. Sweet as saccharin. It's nice you could join us. I set a small stack of color-coded packets on the counter. Green for mortgage. Blue for medical. Yellow for one-time favors that had never been one-time. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shake. Since we're here, I said, let's align on facts. Sienna scoffed. You're doing a PowerPoint at dinner. No. I slid the green packet to Dad. Documentation. I paid every mortgage bill for 2 years. 81美元. Liu Bai. Verified. Dad read the first page and went still. Mary, he said slowly. Why didn't you tell me? Mom reached for the packet and then thought better of it. This is inappropriate. Noted. I said. Blue packet. Dad's therapy. Copays. Uber receipts when your car was in the shop. Gas logs. Date. Time. Amount. Total $4. 960. Sienna rolled her eyes. So, you want applause for being a son. I turned to her. I want you to stop pretending effort doesn't exist because you didn't make any. She flushed. Wow. Yellow packet. I went on. Sienna's emergencies. 1美元. 200 for the Civic you crashed. 4美元. 500 for tuition debt you promised to pay back. 3美元. 800 to clear 3 cards. You reopened 6 months later. Mom's voice sharpened. Enough. We don't itemize love in this family. I met her glare. Then why did you itemize legacy without me? Silence. The kind that hums. Brandon cleared his throat. He'd been quiet in the doorway. Watching. Maybe we should. No. Sienna snapped. He loves this. The drama. I put one final page on the table. A letter with Daniel's letterhead. This is notice of my equitable claim. I said. Filed this morning. If anyone tries to transfer or refinance the house, my name shows up like a lighthouse. Mom's chair scraped back. How dare you? How dare I protect the thing I paid for? I asked. You made a plan. You can live with the consequence. Dad's hand shook slightly. He folded the letter carefully. Mary, I want you to fix this. Sienna's smile went brittle. Fix what Lucas wants to bankrupt us. I looked at her. Quiet. Steady. I want you to stand on your own legs for once. The call started that night. Aunt Nora. Cousin Ethan. Even Mom's church friend who thought volume equals righteousness. The script was the same. Family comes first. You're breaking your mother's heart. She's older. Your sister needs a home. I replied with one sentence each time. Family comes first when family acts like family. Then I hung up. I wasn't cruel. I was done. 2 days later, Sienna tried a new angle. She showed up at my apartment with a plastic smile and a white bakery box. Truce cake, she announced. I opened the lid. Lemon. Like my birthday. The frosting was perfect. The knife imprint on top spelled "We love you." The "we" felt like a brand. What do you want? I asked. She perched on my counter. Let's be adults. You withdraw your claim. Mom adds you as co-owner. We do a ceremony. Hugs. Photos. Everyone wins. In the title, I asked. Split 50/50, downgrade your shopping cart to reasonable. Her eyes flickered. The title goes to me for simplicity. But we swear we'll treat it like it's both of ours. I laughed. You had a chance to treat it like ours. You chose option me. In from. She slid off the counter. Fine. Keep playing lawyer. You'll hate where this goes. I already hate where it's been, I said. At the door she turned. Our parents won't live forever. Lucas. Don't make their last years miserable. It was a threat dressed as care. Old trick. I closed the door softly. Daniel called the next morning. Heads up, he said. Your sister's counsel reached out. They want a meeting. All parties. They're proposing Thursday. 3 p.m. Neutral office. Good, I said. I'll bring exhibits. Lucas, he added. Voice even. Stay calm. They'll prod. Let the papers do the punching. I smiled. Papers punch harder than I do. We hung up. I looked around my apartment. The boxes were mostly gone. The space felt larger. My life fit here now. It didn't rattle. I brewed coffee. Black. No sugar. I opened the folder and rehearsed. Sequence mattered. Mortgage. Medical. Sister bailouts. Witness statements. Dad's letter. The email chain. The notice filing. Breadcrumbs in order. So no one could wriggle out. Every 30 minutes. My phone lit up with a new attempt at influence. Be reasonable. Don't embarrass us. You're dramatic. I set it face down. Let it buzz like a dying wasp. That afternoon, I drove past the old house. The lawn was clipped too short. All edge. And no softness. Mom's curtains were perfectly straight. In the kitchen window, 5 mustards gleamed. Performance food. Dad stood on the porch. One hand on the rail. When he saw my car, he lifted his palm in a small, embarrassed wave. I pulled over. Lucas, he said quietly. I'm sorry. You don't owe me an apology, I said. You owe yourself a voice. He nodded. I'll be there Thursday. I believed him. For once. The night before the meeting, I packed everything into a sleek black accordion folder. Tabs labeled. Evidence crisp. I placed one last item in the back sleeve, a small photo of me at 10 years old, kneeling next to my grandpa in that same front yard. Our hands covered in dirt from planting a sapling. My grandpa's note scrawled on the back, roots matter. So does who waters? I slipped it in. Not for them. For me. I slept harder than I had in months. Thursday. 2:57 p.m. Neutral office. Frosted glass. Beige chairs. A bowl of stale mints. Sienna arrived first. Chin high. Mom followed. Mouth set tight. Brandon nodded at me. Eyes darting like he wanted to be anywhere else. Dad sat beside me. Spine straight. Jaw clenched with effort. Daniel was calm. Pen ready. The opposing lawyer entered. Crisp suit. Practice smile. Shall we begin? We did. I opened the folder and started with green. Then blue. Then yellow. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Numbers landed like stones in a lake. Halfway through, the other lawyer tried to cut in. This is a family matter. Not a courtroom. Daniel lifted a palm. We're establishing facts. We'll get to proposals. Mom's composure cracked first. He's punishing us, she snapped. I looked at her and, for the first time, spoke with no tremor. I'm setting the bill on the table. You pushed it under the rug for years. Sienna leaned forward. What do you want? There it was. The real question. I slid one final page across. Co-ownership recorded now, I said. Reimbursement schedule for my past payments. and a written commitment that any future sale splits net proceeds evenly. Sienna's face hardened. No. Then we proceed with a full challenge. Daniel said, "Your call. But my client's notice is already live. And discovery will be unpleasant." The room went very quiet. I could hear the air vent. Mom opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. "We need time." "You've had years," I said. "You used them." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Give us 48 hours. I nodded once. 48. We all stood. Papers slide back into folders. Chair scraped. On the way out, Mom brushed past me. She didn't look at my face. She stared at the floor. In the elevator, Dad squeezed my shoulder. Just once. No words. The doors opened to the lobby's polished stone. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A new message. Unknown number. It was a photo. My bedroom at the old house. The closet doors open. Boxes stacked. A caption: "If you won't play nice, we'll start packing your memories for you." I stared at the screen. The mustard parade had grown claws. I looked up at Daniel. "Change of plan," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Go on." And that's where the real execution begins. The photo of my childhood room hit me harder than I expected. The boxes, the empty shelves, the caption: "If you won't play nice, we'll start packing your memories for you." It wasn't just a threat. It was proof. They weren't waiting for lawyers or courts, they were already erasing me. I showed Daniel. He narrowed his eyes. "That's intimidation. Save it." So I did. Screenshot. Timestamp. Evidence folder. 2 days later. The 48 hours expired. Their lawyer emailed Daniel a vague note. "The family is still considering options. We request patience." Patience. That word was salt in an open wound. Instead of waiting, I acted. First, I called the mortgage company again. "If payments lapse, notify me immediately," I said. "Send me duplicate notice." By email and mail. The clerk confirmed my request. Then, I froze my contributions. No more silent deposit. If Mom wanted her golden child to inherit a house, she could start by writing a check. Within 3 weeks, I heard from the lender payment overdue. I smiled bitterly. My mother had always been prompt with bills because I was the one paying. Without me, cracks showed fast. At dinner that Sunday, Mom's hand shook when she poured iced tea. Sienna looked pale. Mascara heavier than usual. I waited until Brandon reached for the bread basket. Then, said, casually, "So, the mortgage notice arrived. Interesting. Right. First time in 2 years." Sienna slammed her glass down. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I met her glare. "I'm enjoying watching reality show up uninvited." Mom's voice wavered. "Lucas, please. We can figure this out together." "No. Mom, you figured it out without me. Remember, you had a plan. I'm just watching it play out." Dad coughed. The sound sharp. "Enough. Stop tearing him down. He's the reason we have a house to fight over." The table went silent. It was the first time Dad had said something that directly sided with me. Sienna's lips parted in disbelief. The following week, my cousin Ethan called. He's one of the few relatives I trust. "I heard from Aunt Nora," he said. "They're saying you're trying to kick your parents onto the street. Is that true?" I laughed bitterly. "No, Ethan. I'm trying to stop them from handing my work to Sienna like a party favor." He paused. "Good. Because people are starting to whisper. You want me to set the record straight? Please, just tell the truth." He did more than that. He texted me a screenshot 2 days later. A family group chat. He dropped my scanned bank statements into the thread with one line: "Lucas paid $81. Liube. Facts before gossip." The replies: silence. Not a single heart emoji. Not a single defense. Sometimes silence is louder than yelling. But Sienna wasn't quiet for long. She showed up at my apartment one Thursday evening, pounding the door so hard, I thought the frame might crack. When I opened it, she barged in, pacing like a caged animal. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "Do you know how embarrassing this is? Everyone thinks I'm some parasite." "Because you are," I said flatly. Her hands trembled. "Mom says you're twisting Dad against us." You always wanted to be the victim. And now you're winning. I shook my head. No. Sienna, I wanted a family. You wanted a throne. She blinked. For a second, I thought she'd cry. But then her face hardened. You think you've won. Wait until Mom updates the documents again. She'll cut you out entirely. I leaned forward. Then I'll see you in court. With evidence. With witnesses. With Dad on my side. Do you really want to drag this into public record? Her jaw clenched. She spun on her heel and slammed the door so hard the walls rattled. That weekend, Brandon called me privately. Lucas, he said. Voice low. I can't keep doing this. Sienna's losing it. She maxed out another card. Your mom covered it. But she's furious. The mortgage is still unpaid. They're scrambling. Good. I said. Listen, if this explodes, I don't want to go down with them. I'll testify if I have to. I'll tell the court you carried the whole thing. His words sank in like a key sliding into a lock. Sienna's own husband was ready to flip. I thanked him, hung up, added his name to my witness list. By the end of the month, the pressure was visible. Mom's hair looked unwashed at dinner. Sienna snapped at Brandon for nothing. Dad, though he looked lighter, as if watching me fight back gave him permission to breathe. After the meal, he pulled me aside. Son, he said. I spoke with a lawyer too. Independently. I told him I never consented to that will. If they try to use it, I'll contest it myself. For the first time in years, I hugged him. Really hugged him. The turning point came one stormy Tuesday night. I was home when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number again. This time it wasn't a threat. It was a photo of Sienna, screaming at Mom in the kitchen, finger jabbing the air. The caption read, "Golden child cracking." Brandon had sent it. The image said more than words. The dynasty was collapsing from the inside. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then typed back, "Get ready. It's about to end." Because I wasn't finished. Not until justice was written into law. Thursday came with rain. The kind that needles the skin and makes every street shine. I walked into the mediation suite with my folder. My breath steady. My shirt dry. Daniel nodded at me. Dad arrived a minute later. Sana tapping. Face set. I squeezed my forearm once, quiet solidarity. Sienna and Mom sat together on the other side of the table. Matching jawlines. Matching defiance. Brandon lingered near the window. Eyes down. Their attorney clicked a pin like a metronome. The mediator laid ground rules. No shouting. No interruptions. Facts first. Proposals second. I liked him already. Daniel slid the exhibit list forward. We'll proceed in sequence. I opened the folder. Green tabs. Blue tabs. Yellow tabs. I spoke like I'd practiced. Not loud. Not timid. Just certain. 24 mortgage payments. I said. 3美元. 400 each. Total $81. Liu Bei. Every transfer tied to the loan number. Here are bank records and lender confirmations. Kara's note from the branch was clipped on top. Third-party payer documented. Notice of equitable interest filed. The attorney's pen stopped clicking. Care records. I continued. Copays. Transport. Prescriptions. 4美元. 960. Dates. Times. Mrs. Parker's statement sat behind them. Neat, cursive on lined paper. I watched Lucas take Robert to appointments twice a week. I saw him carry groceries. Fix the porch light. Shovel the walk. The lawyer started to speak. Daniel lifted a palm. The mediator gestured. Let him finish. I set down Dad's declaration. His voice on the page felt like a hand on my back. I did not consent to excluding my son. He kept this home alive. Finally, the email chain. Mom's request to the estate lawyer ensures Sienna has full ownership. Lucas has no dependents. He'll manage. The room held its breath. I looked at my mother. That sentence erased me. She stared at the table. No apology. Not yet. The mediator nodded slowly. Proposals. Daniel handed over a single page. Record co-ownership now. Reimburse $81. 600 inches. A 12-month schedule with interest at prime. Any sale splits. Net proceeds evenly. Household decisions require mutual consent. The other attorney cleared his throat. We're rejecting reimbursement and co-ownership. Our counter is this. Lucas receives the car and $10. Ling ling ling. The property remains in Sienna's name. Family harmony is the priority. I laughed once. Short. My harmony isn't for sale. Sienna leaned forward. You want to punish us? Admit it. I met her stare. I want to stop being punished for being responsible. The mediator raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Collins. Ms. Collins, your ability to service the loan without Mr. Collins' contributions. Silence. Then Brandon spoke. Voice low. They're already a month behind. Mom shot him a look that could cut glass. He held it. He didn't flinch. The attorney shifted. Even if funds are tight. This is a family matter. Daniel slid the lender notice across. Tight is generous. A muscle ticked in Mom's cheek. We'll catch up. I folded my hands. With what? Sienna's composure cracked. You always wanted me to fail. Since we were kids. No. I said softly. Since we were kids. I wanted a sister who saw me. The mediator set down his pen. Given the facts. Mr. Collins has a substantial claim. I suggest you consider settlement seriously. Mom's eyes glistened. Not with remorse. With rage. Lucas. If your grandparents were alive, they'd ask who watered the tree. I said. Dad drew a breath. Voice rough but clear. Mary. Enough? Our son saved us. We will not rob him to feed our pride. Silence. Spread like ink. The attorney asked for a recess. We stepped into the hall. Brandon followed me to the water cooler. I'm done lying. He murmured. If they force this to court, I testify. Whatever you need. I nodded. Thank you. 2 minutes later, the other side returned. The attorney's tone had softened. We can agree to co-ownership. He said, but reimbursement is difficult. I lifted a brow. Daniel didn't blink. We can discuss the schedule, not the principle. The mediator wrote a few lines. Here's my suggestion. Co-ownership recorded today. Reimbursement over 18 months to reduce strain. If 2 consecutive payments are missed, the property is listed for sale. And proceeds split after loan payoff. Sienna shook her head. Absolutely not. Mom stared at the ceiling like it held a different answer. Dad stared at her. I leaned in. Elbows on the table. The alternative is discovery. Witnesses. Group chats. The emails. The missed payment reports. Your church friends reading court filings. Is that the legacy you want? It landed. I could see it. Pride and fear wrestling behind my mother's eyes. She whispered. 18 months. No interest. Daniel didn't move. Prime -1. The mediator glanced between us. Do we have an agreement? The clock hummed. Rain ticked the windows. Sienna looked to Mom. Mom looked to Dad. Dad looked at me. Fine. Mom said at last. Voice brittle. Prime -1. The attorney scribbled terms. The mediator printed the agreement. We signed. Legal ink. Real consequences. When it was done, I felt nothing dramatic. No fireworks. Just a long exhale I'd been holding for a decade. We left the building together. The rain had thinned to mist. Dad walked beside me. Slow and stubborn. Mom lingered on the steps, clutching her purse like a shield. Siennalita cigarette she didn't finish. Brandon slipped me a small nod. Not a friendship. A line crossed. At my car. Dad stopped. Son, he said. I'm moving some therapy days. To your place. If you'll have me. Of course. I said. Always. His eyes brightened with a quiet relief I hadn't seen since before the stroke. I'm proud of you. I swallowed. Thank you. He climbed into Mom's car. She didn't look at me when they pulled away. The next weeks were logistics. The deed updated. My name added. The lender account flagged with co-borrower access. Auto notices copied to me. The first reimbursement hit my account on schedule. A small number. But not nothing. Proof of turn. I visited on a Tuesday to pick up some of my old things. The house felt different. Smaller. Tired. In the fridge, the 5 mustards were still lined up like trophies. None of them opened. I laughed under my breath and shut the door. Mom stood in the doorway to the kitchen. You happy now? No. I said, I'm free. She looked past me, toward the family room where Dad was doing ankle lifts with a resistance band. Her mouth softened for a second, then hardened again. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself. I said quietly, I just brought light. She flinched. Sienna says, you turned Brandon against us. I didn't turn him. I said. Truth did. A long pause. She picked up a dish towel, folded it too many times. I don't know how to be your mother anymore. I could have told her. I could have handed her a list of the things I needed at 14, at 20, at 29. But I didn't. I wasn't a teacher here. Not anymore. You can start by not being Sienna's lawyer. I said. You can start by seeing me. She nodded once. Stiff. We'll see. Maybe she would. Maybe she wouldn't. My peace didn't depend on it now. I grabbed the last box from my old room. Posters rolled tight. A cracked snow globe. A photo of Grandpa and me kneeling by that sapling. I slipped the photo into my jacket pocket and left the rest for a donation run. On my way out, I passed the mustard parade again. I took one jar, the truffle one. A souvenir. Not of them. Of me learning to laugh. 2 months later, Sienna posted a story of a new chapter. An apartment with less marble. More carpet. She didn't tag the building. I didn't need to know where it was. The second reimbursement arrived on time. The third was late. Then made. Then late again. After the second miss, the listing clause kicked in. Papers were signed. A yard sign went up. The day the house sold. I drove by once. The sapling Grandpa and I planted had grown into a steady tree. Roots deep. Branches careful. A young couple stood with a realtor on the lawn, smiling like the future had a front door. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. My name on the closing statement was enough. The proceeds came through. Split clean. I moved Dad's therapy sessions to a clinic near my place. He liked the coffee there. We sat after his appointments and talked about small things: baseball, weather, the way rain in this city always smells like concrete and cut grass. Sometimes he'd reach across the table and adjust my collar. Like habit, had muscle memory. Mom visited once. She brought lemon cake. It was too sweet. She kept glancing at the clock. When she left, she hugged Dad too long and me too short. Progress. In its own crooked way. Brandon emailed a short apology. For what it's worth, I'm getting my own place. I replied with good luck. No bridge burned. No bridge rebuilt. Sienna texted a line with nothing attached. You won. I stared at it for a full minute before answering. No. I grew up. She didn't reply. I wish I could say it all healed. That's not true. Family isn't a cut that scabs and disappears. It's a tendon you rehab it or live around the limp. I'm doing both. My apartment feels like mine now. No boxes against the wall. Plants that actually live. A jar of mustard in the fridge. Opened and half used. On some nights, I scroll through comments from people who hear my story and say, you were right. Or, that was too harsh. Or I would have done more. I'm learning to hold all of it without needing any of it. Justice didn't show up as a dramatic speech. It came as signatures. Transfers. Boundaries held. And a steady refusal to disappear. For as long as I can remember, I was the responsible one. Now I'm responsible to myself. 2. Maybe that's the whole point. So tell me, did I go too far? Or not far enough? Story 2. Elizabeth's estate story. Story 3. He owes us everything. My mom wept before the judge. Her face turned white as I gave her the scholarship letter with my name on it. Then their argument came apart. Okay. Read it. So, my parents disguised my Harvard aid package. 97% funded. Had me attend a state school instead. And used the money to pay my brother's business school. 7 years later, they sought to sue me for $67. Ding ding ding. Here's how I nuked them using their own Facebook postings. I'm 25 man. A software engineer in Austin. Earning nice money. I recently purchased my first property. Simply a 2-bedroom townhouse. But it's mine. No roommates. No landlords. No BS. I've been laboring for 3 years straight and live like a monk to save up that down payment. So, I'm sitting on my sofa and enjoying my Chinese takeout when my doorbell rings. Process server with an envelope that's going to utterly wreck my week. Ian Davis. He asks. You have indeed been served. Well done. Man. Thinking that's probably some HOA bullshit. I sign for it. My brain just stops functioning when I rip it open. File a damage complaint. Ian Davis versus Nancy and Robert Davis. In addition to interest, legal expenses, and damages for emotional anguish. My own friggin' parents are suing me for $67. 847. According to the petition, I acquired Parent Plus loans for college illegally and have unfairly benefited from their loss. It threatens to garnish my earnings, demanding prompt payback of every cent they spent on my education, and gives me 20 days to reply or they will take my home away. I'm reading this twice thinking there must be a mistake of some kind. My parents never brought up taking out a college loan. In particular, they assured me that they were assisting and that family takes care of family. So I shouldn't be concerned about the financial issues. Here's the worst part. However, this detailed breakdown of all semester costs dating back to 2018 is included to the complaint: books, housing and board, tuition, and even my fucking diet plan, all financed by loans that I purportedly promised to repay. The weird thing is that I was unaware of all of this. Nothing. They made no mention of these loans at all. They referred to it as assistance, a financial commitment to my future. All of a sudden, I've been avoiding payments and am now a deadbeat. I just got a war declaration from my own parents. It was an outright legal ambush intended to ruin my finances. Not a chat or a hey. We need to talk about money. Just as I'm getting my act together, my phone begins to ring. Alex, my closest buddy, texted me. Drinks tonight. Yeah. Tell me about your new bachelor pad. Please. I reply with a text. Check for rain. My parents just screwed me legally. He makes a call right away. Dude. What? They're suing me for college money. Apparently, I owe them 67 grand. Long pause. That's screwed up even for your family. You need a lawyer like yesterday. Alex has known my parents since high school. He's the only friend who really gets how toxic they are because he's witnessed their manipulation firsthand. Most people hear family and assume there's love underneath the dysfunction. Alex knows better. I know a girl from law school. He says. Caroline. She's ruthless, and she owes me a favor. I'll call her. 20 minutes later. Caroline texts me. Alex filled me in. This smells like extortion. Can you meet tomorrow at 2? That night. I barely slept. I kept replaying every conversation I'd had with my parents about college finances. The more I thought about it, the weirder their behavior seemed in hindsight. Like, how they always changed the subject when I tried to thank them for their sacrifice. Or how they got weird and defensive whenever I mentioned maybe paying them back someday. At the time, I thought they were just being generous parents. Now, I'm wondering if they were covering their tracks. By morning, I had one clear thought. If they want a war, they're going to get one. But first, I need to figure out what really happened 7 years ago. To understand how completely I got played, you need to know about Harvard. Getting accepted to Harvard wasn't just a pipe dream when I was 18. It was who I was. I was that kid who wrote application essays as if my life depended on them, who studied rather than go out, and who enjoyed taking practice SATs. I had good statistics. 0 gigapascals, 1,540 sat, and respectable extracurriculars. It's not great, but it's good enough to try. Harvard was the only school that mattered to me. So I applied early decision. On a Friday afternoon in mid-December 2017, the email of acceptance arrived. When the notification buzzes on my phone, I'm in AP Chemistry. In the laboratory, I almost lose my rights when I see the Harvard University, congratulations. After school, I practically kick down the front door as I run home. I got into Harvard. Mom and Dad. Their response was peculiar. My mom, Nancy, was probably posting passive-aggressive Facebook updates about her friends' children when she hardly looked up from her laptop. Well, honey, that's nice. Robert, my father, was encircled by financial documents in his home office, as is his custom when he has bad news to share. He removed his reading glasses and rubbed his temples. That's definitely a success. Son, he says. But we need to talk about money in a realistic way. I was then seated for what they referred to as a dose of reality. Dad starts running numbers on his calculator. This is where it becomes dubious. Though, he's inflating every expense he can. Yes. tuition. But he also includes room and board, health insurance, emergency fund, travel expenses, books, supplies, and even money for laundry. Mom puts on her worried parent voice and says, "Look, Ian, although your financial aid package only covers roughly 60% of the total costs, Harvard is still a great university and a true honor. The gap is still quite large. 60%. I thought about that number for years. We just can't afford that kind of debt." Dad adds, "This is what I was unaware of at the time. We don't want to burden you with payments that will follow you for decades. And our credit isn't good enough for loans that big." The financial aid paperwork was already open. They were completely aware of what I was eligible for. However, they sat there with straight faces, fabricating this financial crisis to control a completely trusting 8-year-old. The manipulation became more complex. Harvard is full of wealthy kids who have had every advantage. Mom continued, "You'll simply feel uncomfortable. You will have the opportunity to be a big fish in a small pond at state school. Then there is the other option. Texas State University. Excellent engineering curriculum. I could save money by living at home. They would assist with minor costs. As a family, we'll make it work." Dad says, "I felt like I had failed by not receiving enough aid. And the shame was worse than the disappointment. My Harvard dreams died right there at the kitchen table." "Okay," I muttered. "UT is fine. I was putting my parents in an unaffordable situation. However, it gets better. 1 year into my degree program as a sophomore at UT, my older brother Brandon, who had barely finished high school with a 2.8 gigapascals, announced that he was enrolling in a prestigious private business school in Colorado, complete with tuition, room and board, and other expenses. I asked, honestly perplexed, how we were going to pay for this, as I assumed money was tight. "Your mother and I have made significant progress in our financial situation. We decided to invest in Brandon's future. He has real entrepreneurial potential. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks," Dad says, puffing out his chest as if he just closed the deal of the century. "Hold up," I say as I sit there. Brandon is grinning at me across the dinner table. "Not everyone is cut out for the Ivy League. Little bro, business school is where the real money is." He once asked me if Alaska was a state or a country. A year ago. "You couldn't afford my Harvard expenses. But now you can suddenly drop $40. 000 a year on Mr. Say average." The next 3 years were a masterclass. And I felt like a second-class citizen in my own family. I'm living at home, working part-time at Best Buy to help pay my bills, and making the most of my remaining time at UT Engineering while Brandon posts Instagram stories from frat parties and ski trips. "Did you see Brandon's post from spring break?" Mom would exclaim. "He's networking with some very successful people." Every family dinner turned into a Brandon highlight reel. I'm trying to study thermodynamics while Dad watches TV at volume 11 inches the next room, Mom said. But apparently, I'm the one who should be grateful for their support. I was done being their lesser son. But apparently I was never really done. Because that lawsuit showed they'd been keeping score the entire time, just waiting for the right moment to collect. Meeting Caroline was like bringing a rocket launcher to a knife fight. I graduated UT with honors in 2022. Got a good job. And moved out the day after my lease was approved. I slide the lawsuit across the table, feeling like I'm confessing my family belongs on Jerry Springer. She's this noble shit lawyer who looks like she could ruin someone's entire life before lunch and still have time for a Pilates class. We met at this downtown coffee shop, after reading it once and then again more slowly. Caroline's expression changes from one of polite interest to one that seems predatory. "Pas en plus loan," she says at the end. "The problem is that legally, those loans belong to the borrower, which is your parents. And they cannot simply sue you for repayment unless there is a written agreement proving you explicitly promised to pay them back." She leans back in her chair, almost amused. "Ian, this lawsuit has absolutely no legal legs to stand on. Parent plus loans are the parent's responsibility. Period. The fact that they're suing you tells me they're either desperate or getting terrible legal advice. But I didn't know. Even then, they'd have to prove unjust enrichment or some kind of fraud on your part." She pauses, tapping her pen against her legal pad, and says, "Tell me about your college financial aid. Everything you remember." They never mentioned loans. They said they were helping out. Ian, parents don't usually ambush their kids with baseless lawsuits unless they're desperate. Either they're facing some kind of financial crisis, or there's something else going on here. When I finish a year later, Caroline just looks at me for a long time and says, "I need to ask you something important." I tell her the entire story, including Brandon's mysterious business school funding, their claims about partial aid, the kitchen table intervention, and the Harvard acceptance. I opened my mouth to respond, but then remembered that my parents were huddled over my laptop, reading the acceptance email together while I was too excited to pay attention to the details. "Did you ever actually see your Harvard financial aid documents? The official letter from the university?" That question hit me like a slap. Caroline nods and says, "If your parents lied about your aid package, this entire lawsuit could be fraud." She takes out her phone and begins typing notes. "We're going to do the following first. We file a counterclaim for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Second, we subpoena all their financial records from the past 10 years. No, I admit they handled all the financial stuff. I just trusted them. I don't think they expected you to fight back. Most kids would just pay up instead of dragging family business into court. But they picked the wrong target." Alex chimes in. "I'd almost forgotten he was there. If they've been playing games with money, we're going to find out exactly what those games were." That predatory smile was back. "Dude, do you remember your Uncle Frank? Didn't he say something strange about your college situation a few years ago?" Caroline asks. Uncle Frank is Dad's younger brother, and he's an entirely different personality from Dad. Where Dad is stiff and calculating, Frank is laid back and doesn't hold back. "What did he say?" Caroline asks. "We should talk to him." Caroline concludes. "I called Frank that night. He answers the second ring. Ian, how's the new place?" "It's good, Uncle Frank, but I need to ask you something strange." He seemed proud that I had paved my own path even though I had been given opportunities. I thought he was just being strange. I knew this day would arrive. "Do you recall saying that I was given opportunities in college?" Long pause. "Why are you asking?" "My parents are suing me, claiming that I owe them money for my college loans." Those Franks explode. The room begins to spin. "Almost everything. Yeah. Kid, I'm sorry. I thought you knew and just chose UT for other reasons." "Ian, your dad was boasting to everyone about your Harvard scholarship for months. He said you got a package that covered almost everything and they wouldn't have to pay much at all. Would you be willing to testify about this?" Frank, hell yes. Caroline is already taking notes after I hang up. This is good. Family testimony, proving they were aware of substantial aid. But we need official proof. How do we get that? "We're going to Harvard and we're going to get your actual financial aid records." Alex smiles. Perhaps I wasn't totally screwed for the first time since I was served. It was time to discover what my parents had truly stolen from me. Caroline didn't play around. She was constructing a legal fortress while I was ranting about betrayal in my family. I had a lawyer who seemed hungry for battle, a best friend who was there for me, and an uncle who was prepared to blow up my parents' lies. Caroline explained that university bureaucracy is made to be impenetrable. Her first action was to respond to my parents' lawsuit, effectively telling their lawyer to go F himself in the most professional language possible. Then came the difficult part, persuading Harvard to open their archives from 7 years ago. A masterpiece of legal intimidation wrapped in polite academic language. She wrote this formal letter to Harvard's financial aid office, explaining the situation and requesting my complete academic and financial records. But they have to comply with legitimate requests, especially when there's litigation going on. I decided to do some research of my own while we waited for Harvard to respond. Uncle Frank called at that point with an idea. "Ian, your dad has been boasting to anyone who will listen about his investment portfolio. And he frequently posts screenshots of his profits on Facebook. Perhaps there is something there." Frank was correct. Dad was one of those men who believed he was the next Warren Buffett because he had made a few profitable trades. When I scrolled back to 2018, around the time I started college, I saw a lot of dad nonsense, including posts about millennials being lazy, pictures of his golf scores, and complaints about taxes. However, there was also some interesting content. His Facebook was filled with modest boasts about his investments and market insights. I sent Caroline a screenshot of what appeared to be a brokerage account with a $47,000 deposit on August 15, 2018. 2 weeks before classes started. Another post from September 2018, just after my freshman year began, said, "Sometimes the best investments are the ones you don't see coming. Patience pays off. Lest want your smart money." "Holy," she replies. This could be proof of financial fraud. The following day, Caroline receives a call from Harvard, saying, "They found my records. But there's a problem. They can only release them to me directly, and only with proper identification and notarized consent forms. Looks like you're taking that road trip after all," she says, adding that Alex and I drove to Boston that weekend. If they used your scholarship money for investments while claiming they were broke, the drive takes us 22 hours, which we divide into 2 days. And we spend the night in a dubious motel in Pennsylvania, where the Wi-Fi password was password 123. Harvard's financial aid office is exactly what you would expect: intimidating Gothic architecture that makes you feel not welcome. She pulls up my file on her computer and says, "This is very unusual. But given the litigation, I think we can provide you with certified copies of your original aid package." The administrator, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Kim, is surprisingly helpful once she understands the situation. She prints out a number of documents and slides them across the desk. And I'm almost scared to look until I see it in black and white on official Harvard letterhead. Ian Davis has been given a full package of financial aid that includes work, study, need-based grants, and merit-based scholarships that cover 97% of tuition, fees, room, and board for 4 academic years. Plus $3, $200 per year from his family. I'm sorry, Mr. Davis. Dr. Kim watches my reaction with obvious sympathy. I'm looking at the document with shaking hands. Alex looks over my shoulder and whistles. "Dude, they didn't just lie to you. They stole your entire future." The estimated total aid value was $274. Ling ling ling. 97 freaking percent. My family's contribution was supposed to be $3,000 a year. Less than what I was spending on textbooks and gas at UT. They told me it was only 60%, which I was able to say. And they said we couldn't afford the remaining amount. "Your aid package was incredibly generous, and you should have graduated with little debt, maybe $12. 0, 0, 0 total for 4 years, and the drive back to Austin is largely silent. I'm coming to terms with the fact that my parents didn't just favor Brandon, they purposefully ruined my future in order to finance his parents. More than anger, though, I feel relief because I finally have ammunition and proof. And Caroline is waiting for us. When we return, they stole a $4 million in opportunities from me and then had the audacity to sue me for money they never spent." With the Harvard documents in hand, Caroline went into full-on combat mode. But my parents' lawyer wasn't going down without a fight. And when we submitted the scholarship evidence, they returned with a response that was nothing short of legal gymnastics. Her smile when she sees the Harvard documents is downright predatory. "Ian," she says, "we're not just going to beat this lawsuit. We're going to destroy them." In their news story, Caroline read their response and said, "Even if I had received substantial aid, they still provided additional support that I was morally obligated to repay. They never saw the scholarship notification. It must have gone to spam. They acted on incomplete information and made the best decision they could with what they knew. We need to show they knew about the scholarship and purposefully concealed it. But it's legally plausible. They're claiming ignorance and good faith." That's when I recalled something from my adolescence. My mother, Nancy, was completely enamored with this online parenting forum called College Success Network. She had this username, which I told Caroline and Alex was something like Proud Mom or something. And she spent hours every night posting advice, sharing stories about our family, and generally being modest about being the perfect mother. She was always posting about family accomplishments and college preparation. "The Wayback Machine," I said. "Internet archives. If the forum is still operational, there may be cached versions of old posts. If she posted about your Harvard acceptance and said she knew about the scholarship, that's our smoking gun." We spent the next 3 days searching through archived forum pages. And Caroline brought in a paralegal with expertise in digital forensics. After searching dozens of college parenting forums for every possible variation of my mom's username, we finally found it. Nancy, a successful mom, posted dozens of times between 2017 and 2019 on a forum called Elite College Parents, buried in a thread titled "When Life Gives You Unexpected Gifts." We found it. The post was made on April 15, 2018. As parent, we sometimes have to make difficult financial decisions for the entire family. This is a pleasant surprise, though, because my youngest got into Harvard with an incredible aid package, 97% of which was covered by merit and need-based aid. In all honesty, we're pushing him towards state school instead. The youngest is intelligent enough to succeed anywhere. and state school will keep him humble and close to home. So why not save the opportunity for when it can benefit everyone? I read the post 3 times before the news really hit me. My oldest will need our support in a few years. And we can't divide our resources. Alex read over my shoulder and said, "This is it. This is the kill shot." Caroline was already printing certified copies of the archive page. My own mother had documented her crime on the internet for random strangers to see. I couldn't process the stupidity. Though, she posted about hiding your scholarship to fund Brandon. It's a tough financial decision for the whole family. Alex said. But we weren't done. The paralegal discovered more posts from Nancy, a successful mother. It turns out that my mom had a whole online persona centered around being the martyr mother who sacrificed for her family. She acknowledged knowing about the aid package and purposefully choosing not to tell you. Another post from July 2018. We're getting ready for the oldest to start business college next year. And the youngest is doing well at state school. Sometimes you have to think long term. The money we save on the youngest's education will help us support his brother's networking opportunities. And both boys will appreciate it later. She literally described financial fraud as good parenting in the post, which included specifics about their investment strategy, taking the money they would have contributed to Harvard and investing it in high-growth opportunities that would benefit the entire family in the long run. Another from December 2020 asks how we can afford to send our oldest to private school while the youngest graduated from state school. Simple resource allocation. Why waste an amazing aid package when you can invest that money in the child who needs it most? Smart parenting. Family first. She even answered a question from another parent about keeping financial information hidden from children, saying that sometimes parents must make decisions that they won't understand until they're older. Every post was another nail in their coffin. She hadn't just concealed my scholarship, she'd been proud of it while lying to me face. We didn't tell our youngest about his full aid package because we knew he would feel bad about us taking that chance to help his brother instead. Kids don't need that burden. This isn't just a family dispute anymore, Caroline said. We have enough to file for sanctions against their lawyer. This is documented fraud. The worst part is that they violated federal fraud statutes by using federal financial aid under false pretenses. Uncle Frank called me that night. I've been thinking about this, Ian, and I wanted to let you know about something else. About 2 years ago, your dad came to me and asked for a loan, saying they were in a tight spot after making some bad investments. He wouldn't say exactly what they were, but he mentioned something about cryptocurrency and some tech stocks that didn't work out. He said they lost a lot of money. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd gambled it away. The lawsuit wasn't about principal or family obligations, but rather a desperate attempt to recoup their losses. I didn't lend him the money because I assumed it was gambling debt. Frank, would you testify about this conversation? Of course. We're not just going to win this case. Ian. I hung up and turned to face Alex and Caroline. They lost the money, which is why they're suing me now. They invested my scholarship money, lost it all, and now they want me to reimburse them for their gambling debts. Caroline grinned. After months of legal wrangling, the trial date finally came, and Alex kept me sane by bringing drinks and takeout to strategy sessions, usually with some sarcastic commentary about my parents' lawyer. Caroline had me practice testimony until I could recite my story in my sleep. We're going to make them famous, and not in a good way. Alex, looking through the law firm's website, commented, "This guy Johnson looks like a used car salesman. $5 says he tries to make you look like an ungrateful millennial who doesn't understand family values." And he wasn't wrong. The courtroom was small but packed, and news of the case had spread. My parents were dressed as if they were attending a funeral, and I noticed a few reporters in the gallery, which made me anxious until Caroline reminded me that publicity would only help our case. The story had been picked up by local news, with headlines like, "Parents sue son over college costs and family feud goes to court." Johnson's opening statement was pure manipulation, portraying my parents as selfless martyrs who had given up everything for their ungrateful children. With mom dressed in conservative black and dad dressed in his best suit, both of them acting like grieving parents. Brandon was also present, but he looked like he would rather be somewhere else. "Robert and Nancy Davis are good people," he said, pointing to my parents. "They did what any loving parents would do." He used terms like moral duty, family obligation, and basic human decency. They prioritized the future of their kids over their own financial stability. They are now requesting basic justice, not charity or a handout, but just an admission of their son's debt. My mother gave an Oscar-caliber performance when she took the stage. Tears at the appropriate times, a voice that bursts with passion. and an impeccable portrayal of the injured mother. We never wanted this, she muttered as she used a tissue to dab at her eyes. All we wanted Ian to know was what we gave up delaying retirement and taking on debt to give our boys the chance we never had. Johnson guided her through a meticulously prepared narrative regarding their financial difficulties. After that, it was our turn. But it worked. Caroline began with me. She asked me to share my story. 4 years of feeling like the lesser son while Brandon lived it up. Harvard dreams. And kitchen table intervention. When I spoke, I made sure to look the judge in the eye and spoke in a steady tone. The purpose of Johnson's cross-examination was to paint me as a conceited brat. Are you telling this court, Mr. Davis, that a man with your level of intelligence would never have bothered to double-check the most significant financial decision of your early life? I just said that I trusted my parents. Since they were my family, I believe them when they tell me that the aid package is insufficient. How practical. And now that you've achieved success, you don't want to reimburse those who helped you get there. The money that was truly spent on me is not something I'm refusing to return. I'm refusing to pay back money they used for other purposes while lying about what I qualified for. Uncle Frank was then introduced by Caroline. He testified about their frantic efforts to get back the money they had gambled away and about his father boasting about the investment losses. Frank had nothing to lie about, so his testimony was devastating. He was simply being honest about his brother's actions. However, Caroline's presentation of the forum posts was the final straw. Your Honor, let me present evidence from a public online forum that demonstrates Mrs. Davis knew about the defendant's extensive aid package and even wrote about her choice to keep it a secret from him. The archived forum posts flickered to life on a large monitor. Caroline's voice pierced the courtroom like a blade as she read them out loud. With a fantastic aid package, my youngest was accepted to Harvard. Between need-based and merit-based aid, 97% were covered. In all honesty, though, we're guiding him toward state school. I saw the color fade from my mother's face. Dad gave her a very angry look. He had apparently been unaware of her boasting on the internet. Mrs., can you explain to this court why you posted about hiding a nearly full-ride scholarship from your son while simultaneously claiming you were unaware of its existence? Mom's voice was rising as Caroline continued. Davis, the fear was invaluable. No, this isn't real. Hey, Oisus. I never posed this way. The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters stopped scribbling. As Caroline added, removing the financial documents, we have evidence that the defendants used funds from Mr. Davis's scholarship for high-risk investments that resulted in significant losses. This lawsuit isn't about family obligation. It's about forcing their son to cover their gambling debts. The trial was over when Caroline brought up another screen with Dad's Facebook posts about his investment gains, which contrasted with the timing of my college funds. The pattern was clear. Every significant deposit matched a semester at UT that should have been covered by Harvard aid. This is crazy, Brandon yelled as he stood up in the gallery. I warned them that this would backfire. Look, Ian, I knew about the Harvard thing. All right. But what was I supposed to do? Turn down free money? They made their choice. You made mine. The bailiff moved toward him. But Brandon continued to talk. The forum post had blown up their entire case. But the last blow came from an unexpected source. It wasn't an apology. It was Brandon putting them under the bus to save himself. But it was a confession that ruined what little credibility my parents had left. You think I wanted to be involved in this? They threatened to cut me off entirely if I didn't support them. But I'm not going to prison for their foolishness. This court, he said coldly with disgust, will not be used as a weapon for family extortion. The judge's decision was swift and brutal, dismissing their lawsuit and sending it to the IRS for tax evasion and the state attorney general for consumer fraud investigation. When the masks were finally taken off, my parents were waiting in the hallway as we left the courthouse. You've destroyed everything, Dad hissed. Are you happy now? The plaintiff's actions represent a particularly cruel form of emotional and financial abuse. You owe us everything, Mom continued in a venomous voice. You didn't give me everything, I said calmly. You stole it. And now everyone knows it. Then, with Alex and Caroline at my sides, I left my former family to deal with the fallout from their own greed. For the first time in my life, I looked at them without fear, guilt, or the desperate need for their approval. I'm sitting on my back patio with Alex and a few drinks, watching the sunset over Austin. 6 months after the trial, when my phone buzzes with a text from Caroline, I thought you might want to see this. Local couple faces federal charges in college fraud scheme. It's a beautiful news article that describes how my parents were indicted on several charges, including conspiracy, tax evasion, and wire fraud. The federal charges came because they had effectively defrauded the government's financial aid system, and the IRS investigation had uncovered years of financial crimes, including not only the scholarship money but also fraudulent tax returns, unreported investment income, and a dozen other things that were going to make their lives very expensive. They had committed federal fraud by using my aid package for personal investments while lying about our family's actual financial situation. Dude, Alex says, reading over my shoulder. They're looking at serious prison time. You have to report accurate financial information when you receive federal aid. Remember those investments Dad boasted about online? It turned out he had been using my scholarship money for penny stocks and high-risk cryptocurrency trading. And they had not only lost the majority of it but also neglected to report the gains to the IRS. The civil penalties were even sweeter than the criminal charges. The tax penalty alone was 6 figures. They had to sell the house. The same house where they had lied to me about my future. And the article featured quotes from their former neighbors who described how the Davis family had always seemed to live beyond their means: expensive cars, frequent vacations, designer clothes, all of which were financed by money they had stolen from their own son's future. The real justice was social. Remember how my mom loved her online persona as the perfect parent? Well, the local news had picked up on her forum posts, and Brandon was kicked out of his apartment because they could no longer afford to help him. The last I heard, if he was working at a car dealership and living in some shabby studio, trying to rebuild his credit after being linked to their fraud case. Everyone in their social circle now knew exactly what Robert and Nancy Davis were. The family that had built their reputation on seeming successful and caring was revealed as fraudsters who had stolen from their own son. The shot in Freuda was amazing. Screenshots of Nancy, a successful mother, boasting about concealing her son's scholarship were shared on social media thousands of times. Someone even made a phony successful mom Nancy 2025 account that posted updates about her court appearances and mugshots. And mom's old book club friends started a group chat just to talk about her downfall. Uncle Frank called me last week with an update. I told him to ask Brandon, who benefited the most from their crimes, because he had the audacity to ask me for a loan to cover his legal fees. The best part was that my parents were no longer able to afford good lawyers. Your dad tried to hit me up for lawyer money, he said, laughing. Their comfortable middle-class life was forever over. And when Caroline called to give me the final update, she said, "You know what the beautiful part is? They could have just not sued you. They were stuck with an overworked public defender, facing federal prosecutors with unlimited resources and a rocklet case. And Caroline estimated they would be looking at 3 to 5 years in federal prison plus restitution plus fines plus civil penalties." She was right. If they had simply accepted my success and moved on with their lives, I never would have learned about Harvard. However, their greed drove them to try to get one last paycheck out of their son, which ultimately led to their downfall. Had they kept their mouths shut, they might have gotten away with the scholarship theft. But their greed made them careless. My life is going pretty well now. I got some media attention from the lawsuit victory, which led to job offers from larger companies. And I ended up accepting a job in Seattle that offered me full remote flexibility and a big raise. I also purchased a home with a view of the mountains. We went out for drinks most weekends. And Alex never fails to remind me how it all began. "Remember when you thought your biggest problem was whether to get granite or quartz countertops?" he asked last weekend. Simpler times. Man. Alex also moved to Seattle and got a job at a startup downtown. He has a dog, a rescue German Shepherd named Tank, who was about as loyal as my family never was. Yes. But would you change anything? I asked myself. Hell no. The best thing that ever happened to me was discovering who my parents truly were. Would I rather still think they were just loving, flawed people than to know they were criminals who saw me as a financial instrument? Last month, I received a call from Harvard's alumni office asking if I would be interested in sharing my story for their magazine. It seems that my case had changed their policy regarding financial aid notifications, requiring them to speak directly with students rather than just parents. The editor said, "Your story demonstrates how education can overcome family dysfunction, and we would like to include you in our Overcoming Adversity series. Next month, the article will be published." The best part, though, was what came next. Through their extension program, Harvard gave me the opportunity to finish my degree with full scholarship and extra help for the years they had taken away from me. This fall, I'll be starting classes. At the age of 27, I will graduate debt-free, with a Harvard degree and a tale that demonstrates that sometimes the best form of retaliation is simply letting oneself be destroyed. I returned from my Harvard graduation ceremony 2 years later, Of course. Alex went for it. Uncle Frank was also present, grinning like a proud dad and snapping a gazillion pictures. How are my parents doing? Nancy received an 18-month sentence in federal prison. Robert received 2 years. You can learn all you need to know about that family from Brandon's testimony against them, which he gave in exchange for immunity. Eventually, they will be ashamed and broke. However, I no longer have that issue. Where I saw parents, they saw a business opportunity. I'd rather not have that kind of